Hi there, I'm Nancy Herring from Now We're Cooking. It's Tuesday, so it's time for tips, tricks, and treats. Today we're going to make bread. And I'm going to be jumping around because in order to show you several things, I want to do it kind of backwards. I'm not doing sourdough, and I know a lot of you have a sourdough starter that you've named and all of those things. I'm not patient enough and I don't bake bread enough to keep my sourdough starter going. So this is just a regular bread recipe, but a lot of the techniques transfer. And the reason I say I'm going backwards is this dough has already been made and is rising, and I want to, what they call, punch it down. It's more than doubled in bulk, and I'm just going to do just that. I'm going to put my fist in it and gather it together. Now I want to shape it into loaves. And this is called an Italian bread recipe. So you can do long loaves, you can do short, round loaves, you can do whatever you want to do. But I'm going to do the longer ones, and then I'm going to show you some that I've done. And my cloth that is supposed to stay still is moving around, so we're just going to pretend it's staying still. I want to divide this into two. I'm going to use my bench scraper, which is one of my favorite things to use when I'm baking bread. You'll see I'm going to use it again when we make the dough. If you really want to be exact, get your scale out and measure the two balls. Otherwise, just hand it. So what I want to do, because I want to make a long loaf, I can just try and form it as it is now, but it's going to work lots better if I take my rolling pin and roll this into sort of an oblong or an oval, or however it turns out to be, and then roll it up like a jelly roll. So I just want to make sure there's some air bubbles out of it. I don't want it super long because I don't want my finished dough loaf to be super long. And I'm just patting it to see if there's any air bubbles sneaking around in there. Then I'm going to take the long side, and I'm just going to roll it up as tight as I can, pinching as I go. When I get to the end, I want to pinch, pinch, pinch. I can hear my mom saying pinch, 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 pinch. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Sometimes they look kind of like a dog bone. Sometimes they don't. You just kind of have to play with it. Sometimes they come unpinched, and you know, every day is a new adventure when you bake bread. So I'm using a cookie sheet lined with a Silpat. You can also just use a cookie sheet and put some cornmeal on it, which will give it a slightly different crust on the bottom. And I put my one loaf. And then I'm gonna do, if I wanted super narrow, more in the baguette world, I could do this into thirds instead of halves. It just depends on what your end result needs. My cloth is moving on me. So I'm gonna hold and roll. The reason this is called an Italian and French bread, my French bread recipe is almost exactly the same. All that's in it, and we're gonna do that in a minute, is flour, yeast, salt, and water. There's no eggs, there's no butter, there's no milk, there's nothing to make it a richer dough. I don't know if you can hear this. When you press down, you can hear little kind of air pockets hissing out. The tighter you roll it, when you slice it, you won't see a spiral. If you do see a spiral, hey, then they know you made it yourself. So that's a good thing. So again, tuck the ends in, pinch. You can turn it over to the other side and pinch, 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 pinch. Now there is a device called we've been calling it a lame all these years. Somebody was very careful to tell us it's called a lame. It's a blade that's designed to cut your loaves with. I don't do that often enough, so I'm just going to use a paring knife. And the reason I want to split it now, even though sometimes they say don't split it till you bake it, is as it rises, I want it to have a little room to grow. So you can do fancy patterns, you can do all those kind of things. The other thing that I do that's a little bit different, the store is very cold. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to put saran wrap. When they say cover your bread, a lot of times they say cover with a towel. We live in New Mexico, and a towel often does not hold in the moisture. And then I'm gonna do one other odd thing. I put my cookie sheet on a pot holder because my surface is cold, and then I'm gonna put a towel over it just because it is cold in here. So when I'm done making the other dough, I'll show you how this has risen, okay? So that's the second step. First step is making the dough. What I've already got in here, because I'm not using sourdough starter, I'm using yeast. So I have a half a cup of hot water and they say packages. I buy yeast in a jar, and a tablespoon is about the same as a package. So they've been sitting in here. They don't need to sit, it just worked out that they could. And this is something else that's very different for me. I almost always use a mixer to make my bread dough. I use the flat paddle to start with, and then I use the dough hook. This is all by hand. So you're gonna watch me for a while. So I'm going to add another 1.25 cups of hot water. If you're not sure what your water's like, get your instant read thermometer out and test it. Our water is hot. It always has been. So let's see. Just straight out of the tap, I'm at 110. So I'm good. I'm gonna pour that in. I want 2 more cups of water. Flour, sorry about that. And then I want 2 teaspoons of salt. And then with a spoon or a rubber scraper or anything, I need to blend all this together. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blend until it's hard to blend, and then I'm gonna do the last part, I'm gonna knead it. And that's when I usually enjoy using a mixer. So be that as it may, we're gonna do it by hand. One of the things that we sell a lot of is this product called the Danish dough whip. And I don't use it, but oh my gosh, everybody in the world uses it. So one of these days I may have to break down and start using it. But I just want to stir this together. And then the total flour says 5 to 5.5 cups. This is where bread baking is not an exact science. You need to learn what it feels like, what it looks like, what it smells like. So if you're not sure, it's a good thing to take that whole 5 cups of flour and put it in a bowl. And then when you're done, you know what you've gotten. I'm gonna count as I go. I know there's 2 cups. This is pretty much my 3rd cup. As it gets closer to being enough, you only wanna put flour in 1/4 cup increments, because you can put more flour in, you cannot take flour out, and you cannot add more water and have it come out successfully. So I'm getting a thicker and thicker dough here. It's still super shaggy, super sticky. So that's about 3 cups. Actually, that was about, that makes it 3. And again, I'm not measuring super carefully here. In a minute, I'm gonna dump it out on my cloth. You can use a cloth, you can use a board, you can use your plain countertop, whatever is easiest for you and however your kitchen is set up. So I'm gonna put a little bit more in. This will be about 4. Not gonna put all this in, I'm gonna put a little bit more in. Then I'm gonna put it out dump it out onto the mat, and we're gonna knead dough. This is where you can take out your aggressions. You can get a lot of steps on your step counter, because if you wear it on your wrist, all that movement counts. So it's like, whoa, what did I do today? Oh, I made bread. We have in this kitchen, and I'm not going to use it because it's down at the other end. My mom did this at the house I grew up in. She has a counter that's about 6 inches lower than this. And she did it for the fact that it's easier for her to knead dough on a lower surface than a taller surface. So if you have the advantage sometime of designing a kitchen and you're not very tall, it's a lovely thing to have. So I'm scraping everything in here. And I'm going to use my dough scraper, and I'm just not going to use my hands quite yet. I want this shaggy dough to form more of a ball, and I want it to be not sticky. It's going to be somewhat sticky, but I don't know how to tell you what it feels like, except that when you stick your fingers in it, right now it's super sticky. You can see it sticking to me. I'm going to put some more flour, and I'm going to use my scraper a little bit. My hands are going to be just covered with shaggy dough, but that's okay. And this is where, if you're using your mixer's just going to do it for you. But it's kind of fun to do it yourself periodically and kind of get a feel for it. And especially if you're learning how, it's nice to actually touch and feel. So I'm going to get it off my scraper, move this. And what I'm going to do, I want to gather and push, and it's still super sticky on me. Put a little bit more. And what I'm trying to do is incorporate all of this flour. Whoop, got a little too much there, and I don't need to get all that in. But it all jumped out on me. Okay. So I'm going to start at one end, gather it with my fingers, push it down with the heels of my hand. I'm going to gather and push, gather and push. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for as much of this flour as possible to be incorporated. And then I just want to keep going. So that's probably enough flour. And when this is all incorporated, then I'll feel it again and see. And you can see what's on my hands. I can incorporate some of that, but I don't have to. Alrighty, I've used this cloth about 5 times today, and I think that's why it's moving around so much. So, gather it up. You can see it's a little, when I touch it, it's a teeny bit tacky. Put a little bit more flour. And what I want it to be is smooth. I want it to be, my mom used to spank it and say it should sound like a fat baby's bottom. So if you hear me spanking it, that's what I'm doing. So push and turn, push and turn, push and turn, pick it up. And I'm looking for a smooth ball. I'm looking for a ball that's not sticky. And as much of this flour okay, I'm going to stop for 2 seconds and get some of this off my hands. And I'm going to bring my bowl over. And I'm going to knead it a little bit more. Hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to let it rise in a ceramic bowl, and I warmed it up. I put it in the sink. I filled it full of hot water because, again, if your kitchen is cold, your ceramics are going to be cold also. So I want to give the bread a fighting chance to rise quickly by doing that. So a little bit more just straight up. You know what, at this point I'm taking it off of here. I did a good job with it, but it's too wiggly for me. So push and turn, push and turn. They say about 5 or 6 minutes. You can keep going. You don't want to do it too little, but you don't have to just go on and on and on. So I'm gathering up all this flour that jumped off. And what I've got, I do one more little dust. and round and round and round and round and round and round. Alrighty, then I'm going to gather it up. I want it in a ball as much as I can, make it into a ball. If I think I need a little bit more kneading, I can do that. But I'm also going to grease this is the easiest way to do this. I've got my warm bowl. I'm going to put a little oil. I'm using an unflavored oil in this. Sometimes I use olive oil. Just depends on what the final product is going to be. So I take my dough ball and I push it down into the oil, turn it around, then I flip it over. So now I have oil on the top and the bottom. And again, because of where we live, I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. And what you need to kind of have a sense of, it's always till it's doubled in bulk. Part of that is visual, to kind of see where it is right now. If you're using a glass bowl, or if you're really not sure, you can make a little mark on your bowl and see. Also, when your dough is doubled in bulk and you stick a finger in it and poke a hole in it, the hole will stay, and that's how you know. But again, I want it in a warm spot. I don't want to put it in my oven. I don't want to put it, but if your kitchen's cold, you want to put it in a warm spot. I want to show you that these have risen, and I'm not going to let them rise anymore because I don't want giant loaves. But I want to show you something that this recipe calls for: just forming the dough and then dusting with flour if you care to. I did it two ways because I like a crispier crust. So this is the same dough. This is with nothing on it. It's just, I stuck this in the oven, I sprinkled a little bit of flour on it. Fine. These I brushed with an egg wash. I beat an egg with a little bit of water, used a pastry brush and brushed it on. So if you like this kind of crust, do an egg wash. If this is a fun crust, don't. Do you want egg wash on these? Okay. So I have the egg already here. Sometimes I do just the egg white and the little bit of water. Today I did a whole egg. And I just want to brush it all over. That will give it that slightly crispier crust than not. And again, it just depends on what you like, what you think looks prettier. You can go crazy and cut all kinds of shapes and do really fun things. This needs to bake about 20 to 25 minutes. Again, if you're not sure and you're thinking, how do I know if it's done? You know, a lot of times it looks good on the outside. How do I know if it's done on the inside? If you stick your instant read thermometer in a hidden part of your dough, it should register between 190 and 210. And then you know that your dough is done. You also can see, does it sound hollow? But they're both, I mean, we ate the rest of this one. But I wanted to show you, this is a traditional way to form this. I just took another ball of dough. I did roll it out, and then I just worked my hands under it so that you could have a round loaf as well. And you can see on the back, that's where, when I was trying to gather it together. So sometimes you get a little, that's my egg wash. And this one, I got a little close to the oven edge there. But you can see where it was rolled together on both of them. You can see a little bit of cut there, but oh my gosh, here's what we cut yesterday. Oh, the other thing that is, you know, we put out lots of things that are fun to have when you're making bread, but when you're eating bread, a bread knife is paramount because well, let's put it this way. If you have a hot loaf of bread out of the oven, you just want to rip it up and put butter on it, go for it. If you want to cut it, a bread knife is going to help you the most. You can see that I did my spirals really well, so you can't see the spirals coming undone. But the bread knife has the teeth that just let you cut into it. And you can see a few little pockets, but fine. Put a lot of butter on it, put garlic butter, put honey butter, put whatever. But bread is easier than you think. And if you do have a sourdough starter, a lot of these techniques transfer. What I did differently is I was using a yeast dough. If you're using your sourdough starter, I'm sure you have some formulas for how much starter and how much other things to add to it. But the shaping and all of those are universal. What we put out for you, these baskets are called bannetons, and there's lots of different shapes. They're reed, and when you form your loaf, like if I wanted to do a round loaf like this, I would dust this with flour or use a liner, and then you rise your dough in this, and then you put your cookie sheet and you dump it out like so, and then your bread has that really cool beehive pattern. They come in lots of sizes, they come in ovals, they come in little teenies, they come in silicone, so it gives you just a fun way to shape your dough. If you're not sure if your dough will hold up, we have baguette pans and French bread loaf pans with the loop-de-loops. And the other thing is, if you use a Dutch oven, which a lot of people do, the loaf lifter is a silicone sling that you put in your Dutch oven, and then it has two parts that stick up so you can pull it out and get your dough out easily. So play around, bake bread, it's fun to do. If you've never done it before, your friends and your family will just think you are the best cook in the whole wide world because, hey, I made that bread. So give it a shot. I'll post the recipe and we'll post some pictures. In the meantime, Now We're Cooking is at the northeast corner of Paseo del Norte in Wyoming. We are open Monday through Saturday from 11 to 4. We've got lots of bread things to help you out with, and we'd love to talk to you about your baking. So please come visit us. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again. Bye now.